It's very important for us to think about and consider what our chief end is, because our chief end is what really drives us. It is what compels us to act according to what we believe, or in some cases, if we're not thinking about what our chief end is, we may end up being compelled to act in ways that we don't actually believe. It's very important that we have the right theology, that we believe the right things, that we understand biblical truth, that we understand who God is and what our relationship to God is and how He wants us to act. That's all very, very important and foundational. But if we don't also give consideration to our chief end in all of that, simply knowing the right things, simply having intellectual knowledge is not going to be enough to compel us to actually live according to that knowledge. We need to give consideration to what our end is in all of that knowledge. And the Scripture is clear that our ultimate end ought to be the glory of God. Whether we eat or whether we drink or whatsoever we do, we need to do that to the glory of God. That needs to be our chief end. And the fact of the matter is, really, everyone has a chief end. Christians have a chief end. Unbelievers have chief ends. Everybody has something that drives them. It's sort of like our conception of what flourishing and prosperity and happiness will be. Whatever we conceive of the true goal of our lives, the true end of happiness and satisfaction, that is what's going to compel us to act in certain ways. That's what's going to drive us to live in certain ways. So we all have a chief end. And if we don't, as Christians, give careful consideration to what our chief end ought to be, and then work very diligently to shape and form and cultivate a biblically driven chief end, which is the glory of God, if we don't give consideration to that, then our default is going to be that our chief end will be influenced and shaped by the pagan culture around us. And ultimately, usually what our chief end ends up being is our own self-gratification, our selfishness. So as believers, we need to make sure that we are cultivating, that we are forming within us a deeply rooted chief end centered in the glory of God. And the primary way that we do that is by sinking ourselves into the Scriptures, by filling our minds and our hearts with a reality of who God is, with a delight in who God is, and then with an understanding of how we ought to live in order to glorify God. Whatever our chief end is, that is what will drive us. And so we need to be certain that our chief end is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever.